from the last one, we left off with that list of 10 questions, and we didn't get a chance to deal with 2 of them. And we also left off with the idea of God being a loving father and God being a loving husband, and what those 2 things really are and what they're not. And we're trying to differentiate the characteristics of this being with the characteristics of his imposter, who's trying desperately to counterfeit these characteristics and has confused mankind for 6,000 years. So we're starting to use the terms good Messiah, bad Messiah. I'm differentiating between the bad Messiah and the good one. I'm calling him the bad lamb and the bad lion, because there's the good lion and there's the good lamb. Because Satan is noticed that God has separated his characteristics into this lamb lion, and he has been working to counterfeit this as well. So I want to break down and really dig into, what does a good lamb look like? What does a bad lamb look like? What does a good lion look like? What does a bad lion look like? And so hopefully when these events start happening, because these events are happening. I mean, we are literally, every time you turn on the newspaper, one of these things is actually happening right now and then. So we want to get into some pickup questions from the last time. The one we didn't deal with is, could Jesus be a great moral teacher but not God? Well, we know what we know about Jesus from what, 8 or 10 New Testament authors? Let's forget about the Old Testament authors that we think are talking about the same individual. But taking strictly the testimony that we have from these 8 or 10 Jews that wrote about him, in order for him to be a good moral teacher, he can't be a liar. And what these 8 people, these 8 Jews that talked about him, they all referred to him as a divine being. So he himself referred to himself as a divine being. When Pontius Pilate, I think, pushed him saying, hey, so are you the Messiah or not? And he said, you said it. So remember when they were pushing him on a Saturday, and he said, your sins are forgiven. This guy was sick or he was handicapped, and what everybody was waiting for was for him to heal him. But instead of healing him, he says, your sins are forgiven. He's like, what's that got to do with the price of tea in China? And then immediately the objection was, only God can forgive sins. Why are you doing that? And then he says, well, just to show you that I have the authority to make the statement that I said, he told him, get up and walk, and the guy gets up and walks. So the healing physically was secondary to the healing spiritually. But it was done in a way to show that, hey, I'm not just talking without the authority. To show you that I do have the authority, I'm going to do something that is divine in essence. So besides Jesus' own testimony, the testimony of all of the apostles that wrote about him, you cannot put him into, he's just a great moral teacher. The guy, who said it? He's either a lunatic, a liar, or he's divine. That choice is very rational. Because if he was not divine, he could have been nuts. Delusions of grandeur. You could chalk him up as a nut job. Unfortunately, nut jobs don't act and talk and reason the way he reasoned. He says, well, he could be a liar. Again, liars usually are doing this for some sort of a selfish reason. They're either in it for the fame, the money, or the girls, the 3 G's, gold, glory, and girls. And Jesus scored really poorly on all 3 of those. So if that's what he was trying to do, he's a really poor con artist. The other one is, when God gives you over to a reprobate mind, does that mean that it's because you've kept on disobeying the truth that you know? Yeah, I think that's the case. It's like kind of an antibiotic. It has, if the antibiotic doesn't fully take over the bacteria, eventually the bacteria becomes antibiotic resistant to the antibiotic. And the Word of God, the Holy Spirit, the traction of you being pulled in a proper direction to get you to repent, as that tractor beam is refused and you keep pushing it away, eventually that tractor beam becomes weaker and weaker. The law of God is written in our hearts. When you're young, it's written in boldface. But as you get older and as you refuse it and as you sin and as you become obstinate and you just insist on doing things your own way, eventually that boldface becomes, small font, and you keep going. Eventually the writing it becomes unlegible. And at that point, the Bible says that you've been given over to a reprobate mind. You no longer even have the ability to recognize which way is up and which way is down. People like Pharaoh was a good example of a guy that was so stuck on doing things his way. He got so insistent on destroying Moses and the Israelites that he was given over to a mind that was beyond repair. Okay, so we keep adding a couple more things. I know most of you guys have watched the previous videos, and I really want to add the foundation of Satan's kingdom is pride. This is really the sin that he builds all of them on. And there's something that is really nasty about it. It's not just laziness and selfish and stingy and a liar. And yes, he's the father of lies, and he's not generous, but the guy is hungry for honor. And he just cannot accept submitting to anyone or anything. He needs to be at the top of the food chain. Now, he's happy with being at the same level. He's happy with a homogeneous relationship with God. He doesn't have to be on top as long as he's sitting at the same level. And that's why I call him, he's unisex. Notice that when the good angels take possessions of bodies and they appear in the earth, they're always in the form of male. Lucifer, on the other hand, when him and his demons appear, sometimes they appear as women, sometimes they appear as men. They're unisex. They go back and forth. They don't make the distinction that the Bible makes about the relationship between a husband and a wife and the relationship between a father and a son, because these relationships are based on a submission that's going on between the two. There's mutual love and respect, but ultimately we know that push comes to shove, the father has the final vote. Same thing between a husband and a wife. The description of marriage that's talked about in the scriptures is that when push comes to shove, she's the co-captain, he's the captain, and he is responsible for leading the family. Now, all of these relationships are not homogeneous. Homogenization means that everything is at the same level. That's what introduces the idea that animals and humans, and we can reach a divine status. We're trying to homogenize the areas of creation. But we're also trying to homogenize the relationships, especially the relationships that God uses to deal with humanity. Because in this allegory, God is the father and we are the child. We're the son. In this allegory, God is the husband and humanity at large is the wife. So when we show up with a feminism attitude of, well, I think husbands and wives are 50-50, the reason why that is popular to this way of thinking, because you don't want to submit to anybody or anything, the reason why that's popular is because, in essence, what Satan is telling mankind, you should not be submissive to your husband. You should be at the same level as he is. That's why the relationship between husband and wife is under attack. You don't want the wife to be submissive to a husband, because that, in effect, shows, if you find a happy husband and a happy wife, that shows the universe that mankind could be submissive to God and still be fully respected, fully human, and fully happy. See, what Satan's trying to tell us is that God's ways of doing things leads to pain, misery, and death. God's telling us that his ways of doing things leads to pain, misery, and death. And so he teaches the son, don't submit to the father. You be your own man. I call him, the prideful prodigal son. Now, when it came to getting the money, he did get it from the father. See, all the blessings do flow from up above. But as soon as the prodigal son got the cash, then he put on his independent, I don't need you anymore, and I'm out of town. So these relationships are extremely important because that's how God is explaining his character and his relationship to humanity. And sometimes we're the son, and sometimes we're the wife. So start thinking about how would you want the perfect son. If you're a father, think about how would you want your son to relate to you, because that's the way God wants you to relate to him. If you're a girl, then put child over here. How would you want a child? How's the perfect child supposed to relate to a mom or a dad? Because remember, God's the mom and dad, and we are the son and child. That helps you understand what God wants out of you, why his way is good. And when you see a good couple that has good, healthy kids, and you see the relationship, you're like, wow, the kid is submissive, but yet the kid is independent. The kid has his own being. He's not just yes, but what do I do, Mom? What do I do, Dad? Which way do I go? The kid has his own life, but yet he's submissive to his parents. And everybody's happy and it works just great. And it's a beautiful thing to look at. The opposite scenario is you go into Albertsons and the kid is over there, hey, mommy, give me the kid, give me the... And he's miserable. He's not submitting to the mother's authority. She's miserable. He's miserable. And then she tries to give him the lollipop. That doesn't work. He wants authority over the mom. You see now we're back into no submission and no fear, no honor, no respect for anybody or anything. And when somebody who is built to be submissive to the guy on top, like a child to the mother or to the father. Children are built to be submissive. You can tell by their height. See, they're this tall. Or their weight. There's a reason why they're not born at 200 pounds. They're born at 8 pounds. Mom and dad have a natural authority. It is built in the design. And when the kid is happy in that position, everybody's eating cheesecake and smiling. When the minute that the kid starts to want to rule the roost and he wants the authority of the mother or the authority of the father, now you got yourself a problem and everybody's miserable. Father and child are miserable. God is not happy and his creation is unhappy. Go to husband and wife. Same exact thing. When you see a loving husband and a loving wife, there's an element of submission, but he's also extremely different. He considers her opinion. She feels loved, protected, provided for. That is one happy woman. She doesn't feel like she's like underneath the thumb of a tyrant jerk who, we try to find examples of tyrant jerks in the media and good loving husbands. Give me a picture of... who do we have? Oh, Little House on the Prairie. That gives you it all. Okay, Little House on the Prairie. You got Charles Ingalls, and you got the what was his? And the Olsons is the other side. The degenerate, what you don't want. This is what you want. This is what you don't want. Over here, you have a loving wife and you have a loving father. Okay, happy kids. Over here, you have a totally inept dude. Notice that he's miserable. You got a mom that runs she's trying to always run the place. She wears the pants in the family, and she's miserable. And the kids are totally miserable. Long-haired galoop over here, he caused nothing but problems. What was his name? Willie. And this girl, you want to do nothing but beat her into. Basically, you wanted to spank her every single time that he failed to do it. You just felt like getting that TV and giving her the whoopings that he needed to give but failed to provide. So I think this is a really good picture of a loving father and a loving husband, and a weak father and a weak husband, something in this category here. and a tyrant. Now, the only tyrant I could think of was Tony Soprano. I don't even know if you guys, hopefully you guys didn't even watch this, but Tony Soprano was a perfect example of what a tyrant father is. This character here, okay? Prideful, rash, arrogant, dominant, sovereign, inconsiderate of others. He basically was the king of his castle without any of the attributes of what God says that a husband should treat the wife, or what a husband should treat his children. So hopefully you guys don't know what I'm talking about, but let's go back to the one that everybody does know. The Little House on the Prairie. Oh, okay, give me Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy's good, because Ted Bundy's another perfect example of a weak father. Al Bundy, sorry. Okay, every time I say something stupid, we have a bell on the side. So feel free to just ring it. Now look at this guy. Notice he's not a provider. Look at the house that he provides. He got a couch that he probably got off of some garage sale. Everything. He's lazy. He's watching the remote. His daughter's going out, coming back at 3 o'clock in the morning. No discipline to the daughter. He ignores the wife completely. She's desperately trying to get his attention. He ignores her because he's got to watch his football game. It pretty much gives you the good example of what a weak, lazy, procrastinating, absentee, doesn't provide no discipline, no law. Now, I'm trying to shove these two characteristics and highlight them because when it comes to the Messiah is broken down into these two categories, lamb and lion, law and grace. And if you show one without the other, the picture of God ends up looking like either Al Bundy or Tony Soprano. For example, a Jesus that is only a lamb, that has no love of order and no discipline and no law, and he cannot establish a kingdom on earth. A Jesus that's like that, he's off. You're not representing what God's true character is. And if you strip this being of half of the characteristics of what you need in order to have a loving father, he's no longer that being, and he becomes ugly. He becomes just as ugly as those guys. And so when you're trying to sell him to somebody, like if you're trying to sell our Messiah to the Jews, and we show up with a guy that doesn't have any lion in him at all, that he's only a lamb, that he's only a Ted Bundy, and these guys are waiting for somebody to reestablish, Al Bundy. Then we can't, we are misrepresenting the God of the New Testament, the God of the Old Testament, and he becomes unsellable because the guy is in essence a jerk. Now, whether he's a jerk because he's weak or whether he's a jerk because he's a tyrant, it's fine. Either way, he's not lovable, and I don't want to be married to him. I don't want him as my husband, and I definitely don't want him as my father. That's the key. Ask yourself, when you describe God's characteristics, do you want to be married to a guy like that? Let's say that you were the wife. Would you want to be married to a guy like that? Let's say that you were his kid. Would you want him as a dad? Would you want him as a father? Would you want him protecting you against the bully that wants to beat you up? Would you want him to bring you to the basketball game and watch you score the points, and you look up and your dad is there cheering you on because he's your cheerleader? That's what this being describes himself to be. He's extremely lovable. And if you put yourself in the position of wife and child, you will appreciate what he's done for you over 6,000 years. And it'll also explain to you how you should act being on this side of the fence. Because that's why I noticed that the way he built the family is he lets everybody be up on every one of these squares. For example, father, let's put father, mother. Notice that sometimes you can, in a normal family, you can actually know what it's like to be the guy on the top of the authority food chain. And that helps you understand God's desires. What he likes, what he doesn't like, what he wants, what he doesn't want, what is offensive to him, what is extremely attractive to him. If whatever your son and child do to you being mother and father, if you do that to God, pretty much he'll feel the exact same way. Same thing with husband and wife. And that's why most people end up being married, and everybody understands. As a wife, you can pretty much know what a good husband is like. And as a husband, you can pretty much know what a good wife is like. The Olsen lady, you get married to someone like that who's constantly wanting to rule the roost, and she will drive you nuts. The scriptures say that if you're married to a girl like that, it's better to be, what's the proverb? Stuck on the top of that one. Yeah. I'd rather be in a tent. I'd rather live in a tent with her, okay, than in a mansion and with her. This lady will make you miss. There is not enough money in the universe to make you. Anything. You just can't even picture. How would you have intimate relations with some? I don't know. It's just a problem. Funny. Okay, let's go dive deep into these characteristics now. Remember when we said to the kids, "Hey, tell me about a good what's your ideal husband?" And the young people said, "Oh, I want him tall, rich, good-looking, strong." The younger girls were giving characteristics that were more shallow than the older women. The older women says, "Nah, I want a defender. I want a guy who's just, who's faithful. He's got law and order in the household. He's a teacher." The older women, the 40s and the 50s, they were giving me traits that were much more aimed at a lamb rather than a lion. Okay? So, let's go back and apply this to Jesus 1.0. He shows up as a lamb. Why didn't we see him? Why did the world reject him? Why did the Jews reject him? Because we were thinking like the 13-year-old girls that we were asking over there, "What do you want out of a husband?" "I want him tall, rich, and good looking." Okay? What they were looking for was tall, rich, and good looking. And Jesus got a 0 on all 3 of those. Okay? But so if you're thinking immaturely, you are not going to recognize this being. Now, let's look at the Antichrist as Satan pops up to the table. The bad lion, the bad lamb, the bad lion. Guess what? The immature mind, they're going to like this guy right off the bat. Where Jesus was weak, he wanted you to love him for who he was. This guy's going to want you to love him for what's on the surface. The Beauty and the Beast. Remember the Disney idea where the guy was ugly on the outside, but on the inside he was actually a lovable guy. And once she decided to fall in love with him, accepting his ugliness, the guy turns out to be good looking and rich. You end up getting all of those things, those fleshly desires that we have. The fact of the matter is, humanity ends up getting these in God. What's the psalm that says, "Behold, the one thing have I desired is to see his beauty and seeing the Lord in his temple." Do a search for beauty, Lord, and temple. Now that's talking about Jesus Christ. But Jesus wasn't a good-looking dude. The Bible says that he was just an average-looking fellow. That verse is talking about David. I think it's King David who's praying, "One thing I really want is to see this guy sitting on his throne in his full glory." And it says he's beautiful. The guy's good looking. When Jesus came back, when he was resurrected, notice a lot of people didn't even recognize him. He looked a little bit different than he did before. My guess is that he was actually good looking at that time. Definitely clean, you got the bushy beard going. That gets a little old. What does it say?
"One thing have I desired of the Lord, that will I seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple."
Yes. See, usually when you read about the beauty of the Lord in the scriptures, it's always talking about the beauty of his holiness. Now, the beauty of his holiness, we did see that 2,000 years ago with Jesus Christ. He showed us the beauty of his holiness. But that verse is not talking about the beauty of his holiness. That verse is talking about the beauty of his physical body, sitting on his temple. And what King David knew is that, hey, eventually I'm going to be fast-forwarded into this kingdom, and I want to see this guy sitting on his full glory. It's It's like, I don't know, Charles Ingalls. The guy always had financial problems. He wasn't the best financial manager of the world. Every time he planted his crops, a storm. you know what I'm talking about? I mean, bad luck bears all. But nonetheless, you could just see that every one of his loving family, they would just want him to be exalted on his throne. You just left the series wanting him to build his big house and have his nice big ranch. He wasn't bright enough to ever get it because everybody was always getting hit by a tornado, but that's what was in our heart's desire. Okay? So let's build on the definitions of these traits. Let's start going on those. And let's finish up with the last time we talked about all these global problems that are coming around, global weather problems, environmental problems, racial tension. We didn't talk about that. Satan creates these issues literally out of thin air. He gets the white guy to hate the black guy. He gets the Chinese guys to hate the Japanese guys. He gets the northern people to hate the southern people. He can create division between north and south. Literally, we had a civil war over the northern states fighting the southern states. We can create a division to the east versus the west. You can divide it this way. You can divide it this way. You can divide it by race. You can get men and women to hate each other. You can get Chinese and Japanese to hate each other. You can get Orientals to hate Caucasians. You can get Caucasians to hate black people. You can find any division from any reason. You can get tall people to hate short people. Okay? Find a difference. Get people to be prideful in either their nation, their race, their family, their culture. My mom's apple pie versus your mom's apple pie recipe. Find anything that we can create division over. Exalt your apple pie recipe to the point where it's sacrosanct. And do the same thing to the guy on the other side of the world, and bingo, you got yourself a potential fight just waiting to happen. The global warming. I mean, we've turned the weather going up and down into a global problem that obviously needs global government. I got articles here from New York Times. Climate change endangers world food output. Date, 1975. Wait a minute. I thought that was today, 1975. We've been eating just fine for 40 years. Okay? Those who claim that the winters were harder when they were boys are quite right. Weathermen have no doubt. Every time you read, the scientists all agree. There's no doubt. Most scholars think. Always put yourself, that means that there's a lot of doubt and nobody knows what they're talking about. Okay, weathermen have no doubt that the world, at least for the time being, is growing warmer. Printed in 1939. Newsweek, 1939. No doubt. 1895, New York Times. Geologists think the world may be frozen up again. Geologists think the world may be frozen up again. New York Times, 1895. Global cooling, global warming, global cooling, global warming. October 1912, New York Times warns us of an encroaching ice age. This was right after the Titanic. You can't be selling global warming when the Titanic hits an iceberg. So that's a good time to be putting on the global cooling hat. Okay? Los Angeles Times, 1923. Human race will have to fight for its existence against the cold. I guess those other guys were in New York. These guys were in L.A. So it could be that L.A. was freezing and New York was cooking. Warm spell, America in longest warm spell since 1776. Temperature line records a 25-year rise. Stated in an article in New York Times, March 27, 1933. August 9, 1923, front page article, Chicago Tribune. Scientists say. See, every time you say something stupid, you have to start it off with scientists say, or most scholars agree. Okay, that's a way for you to say, then whatever you say afterwards has to be accepted, because and notice you didn't list the scientists. I can't check it. I just have to go, scientists have said. Okay, 1923, scientist says Arctic ice will wipe out Canada. Canada's still there. Last time I checked, this was 1923. 1974, New York Times. The facts of the present climate change are such that the most optimistic experts would assign near certainty to major crop failure in a decade. 1974, major crop failure in a decade. So by 1984, we should have had a major crop failure. Scientists, notice the key words, most optimistic experts, and near certainty. Got to pay attention to words like that, because that's a sign that the guy doesn't know what he's talking about, and the way he's proving it to you is by quoting unquotable people that are not in the room. Article also warns again, 1975, the last one, New York Times reported that a major cooling was widely considered to be inevitable. Right. So if you guys want to see these, I left them here for you. It's pretty fun. Okay, we have, go back to the characteristics. Now, we're really going to dive deep into these characteristics. Again, the whole world is on a road of not being able to distinguish between 666 and 777. We're like, how could it be that we can't tell these two beings apart? If one is the perfect definition of selfishness and pride, and the other one is the perfect definition of love, how could it be that we are so confused in telling these two guys apart? How can we make a golden calf and say, this is the God that took us out of the land of Egypt? How could it get so hard? And we've broken it down into good and bad attributes. Now, these apply to a loving husband and a loving father in blue. And we broke it down into the good lion characteristics and the good lamb characteristics. And then we also have the bad characteristics. What does a bad lamb look like? This guy. And what does a bad lion look like? So, and then there's this purple column. Notice that purple is the mixture of red and blue. And what we're doing here is the bad guy never shows up with these attributes written on his forehead. Nobody would worship a guy like this. Nobody would marry a guy like this. And nobody would want a guy like this as his father. It's too obvious that he's a jerk. So what he has to do is he has to give it a spin. He's got to put an element of deception so that he says, it's not that I'm lazy, it's I'm pensive. You understand? It's not that I'm dirty. I'm just allowing the kids to be kids. He always puts a positive spin on a fundamental selfish characteristic. So let's start. Good lions. What are we talking about? A good lion? This aspect of Jesus over here being a good strong leader, a good strong father, a good strong husband. He's alert. He's not careless. He's attentive. He doesn't have a distraction. Now, bold instead of fearful. Decisiveness instead of procrastination. Now let's say that you are the bad lamb. And you have all of these characteristics in your soul. What? That was just my guess. But looking at that list, if you were careless, you're not alert. You're not aware of what's going on around you. Okay, you're on your phone and you trip under your own pothole. How would you sell that to your wife or to your son or to your daughter? How would you sell that as a good trait? For example, like I'm doing it another way. Let's say that you are Mr. Olson, or the other bad husband, Bundy, or the other bad husband, Tony Soprano. See, Tony Soprano or Al Bundy, he was all of these, okay? But do you think that he went to bed calling himself this? Do you see what I'm getting at? He had to sell that to himself. For example, it's not that he's lazy. Hey, I worked hard today. I deserve this beer and this couch and this football game. You understand? You have to come up with moral justification to take the evil out. And notice that the words that are used to sell this, for example, the guy's confused, but he says, no, I'm available to new ideas. You understand? I'm not being slothful. I'm being cautious. I'm not being apathetic. I'm being tolerant. I'm not being a dummy. I'm being humble. You see, you can sell these characteristics by spinning them into that. So, I don't know, put yourself in the shoes of whatever position you want. You want to be married to a Tony Soprano, which is self-centered, selfish, rash, indifferent, covetous, rude, restless, self-indulgent, a hypocrite. He's callous. He's not sensitive, harsh. He holds a grudge forever, never forgives. We should have a new sign about all of these terrorist attacks. Never forget. We use never forget. We should have the poster that says never forgive. Keep that grudge nice and pack in a nice tight grudge and hold that forever. Matter of fact, we should still be holding a grudge for Germany. It wasn't right for Germany to do what Germany did, and we should definitely not forgive Japan. Okay, so I think we should still hate Japan. I think we should still hate Germany. We should still hate Russia. I don't know what they did, but there's a lot of reasons we should hate them. They said they were going to put some nukes on Cuba, so that's enough to hate them. And do you see how we can create conflicts out of basically anybody at any time, at any point in history? But I actually wanted to do the exercise of blanking these out. And I wanted to ask you guys, I wanted to get you into start thinking of how to deceive. And once you figure out the mechanics of deception, I'm hoping that A, you won't fall into this deception and bow down to this guy when he shows himself. But what I'm really hoping is that if any of you actually fall into this red category, thinking that you're one of these guys, I'm hoping that you can correct those errors in and of themselves. And if you're not sure, ask your wife. She probably knows. If you're not sure, ask your kids. They probably know. Because every kid that has a dad like this or a dad like that, a guy that gets easily angered, kids that have dads that are easily angered, they're always they're very shy. They don't like to. They're afraid of taking chances because any mistake they made, they get beat over the head with a baseball bat. So that it's just better to do nothing. Just try to get by without getting yelled at. That's the goal of the day. Just try to get by. So they lack courage. Okay, but what does that dude sell it to him? Oh, son, it's not that I'm trigger happy and I lose my temper quickly. I'm just fiercely loyal to my family. I love you guys so much that I cannot have you making a mistake. You understand? So you want to go through the exercise? Go ahead and blank out. This is like Jeopardy. That you blank out the purple words. Let's blank out these purple ones. And see if that was just my opinion, but I actually want everybody to go through the thinking, say, okay, I got a dad who should be alert. He's not. He's actually careless. what word would you sell? What word would you put here to justify that behavior? Careful? No. You have to. You can't go the opposite. You're careless. It's obvious that you're careless. You have to justify your carelessness.
You're being careful. Spontaneous.
Exactly. See, I'm not careless. I'm spontaneous. That we got one. Okay. You get the exercise?
I don't know if Can you make it bigger so we can see better? Yeah. Is this a good exercise to be good at?
It's a good exercise to be good at. Because I'm telling you, whatever characteristics you have that get on your husband's nerves, you go through this exercise and he'll be like, you might really want to look at this one. Okay? The point is, go through the exercise. We'll be better lovers when this is done. And when you're a better lover, when the God of love comes to the planet, you're going to recognize him. You're going to love him. You're going to follow him. You're going to obey him. You're not going to disappoint him. You're going to be comfortably snuggled in underneath his wings. When you don't clearly understand what it means to be loving and what it means to be selfish, when you're drowning in this purple ink, if you're a Tony Soprano, you ask him, probably you guys are familiar with The Godfather, remember? That guy was completely convinced that he was a righteous dude. He was he was selfish to the core, but yet he was completely convinced that he did all that for his family. The level of self-deception is so high that the guy literally thought that he was a good old Joe. And when he gets shot, he's like, he's almost like wondering, why would anybody want to shoot me? I'm so awesome. All right, come on, let's go number 2. You should be attentive as let me see the line. Let me see as a good lion, as a defender, as a strong part of the character that we want from a father or from a husband. You should be attentive. You should always know what's going on. And you shouldn't be easily distracted. Bundy, remote control. If you do want to be distracted, though, if you want to fall into this category, how would you sell it to your wife, to your kids, or to the universe? How would you sell it? What word would you guys use? Yeah. See, you're getting it. You're getting it. I like both of those. Which one? What did I use? Let's compare the answer with mine. Forget it.
We were multitasking.
Okay. So, you should be bold. Okay. Relaxed, flexible. It counts. Ding. Family Feud, survey says. Okay, boldness. A good father, a good husband should be bold. It's a compliment. He should not be fearful. Okay? But let's say that you don't care enough about your family to put yourself at risk. You don't want to sacrifice yourself, incur pain and for the benefit of them. So you become fearful when you're that way. The mama bear that jumps out in front of the threat to protect the baby bears. That is a natural instinct that a father and a good parent has. So let's say that you're a wuss. Let's say that you're fearful and that you're not. Well, how would you sell that to yourself and to others and to the universe? I'm being what? I'm cautious. I would have jumped in front of that bullet, but I'm just being cautious. That's right. You're being cautious. And notice, spontaneous is actually, there's a word that he's new. He's not stale. And relaxed is another word for gentle. You're going to start seeing this pattern that You get it? The bad lamb is going to start looking like the good lamb. That's the way it's going to be pitched. That's the way this is going to be pitched. If you see we're breaking down the mechanics of love and the mechanics of selfishness, and you could keep adding on this list, by the way, to get to the very, very deep characteristics. And I think if you exercise this, you ask God, please, if I'm a red guy and I'm selling myself to the universe using this purple deception, if my brain has been purpleized, okay, you better get on your knees and ask for a recalibration. You have to unreprobate your mind. You literally got to ask him to fix it. Because if you got so good at this, you literally will not know that you're doing it. You need outside help. That's when we use the phrase, you need some help. You got to get some help. You're nuts and you don't see it. You're a complete dysfunctional human being, and you think that you're the best thing that happens since apple pie. Now you understand why Satan does not look at himself like a bad guy. He's given over to a reprobate mind. He is absolutely convinced that he is the savior of mankind. He's absolutely convinced that he is the best thing that ever happened to us. And he's absolutely convinced that this being is a selfish, intolerant tyrant. And you see, once you keep doing this over and over and over, eventually your brain flips. All right, keep going. Decisiveness. That's what a good lion, a good father, and a good husband should be decisive. The opposite of it is being a procrastinator. Mañana. Okay? So if you're a procrastinator, how would you sell it to yourself and to others?
Being contemplative.
Open to other views. Living in the present.
Being careful.
Yeah. Contemplative, what'd you say?
Contemplative.
Yeah.
Giving it these thoughts.
That's the word. And I like this because I'm not doing the spelling. See, how do we get the wife to start hating her position? The Bible says women submit to your husbands, and then he says, husbands, we should be able to jump in front of the bullet for the wife. Now, as a husband, I don't want to jump in front of a bullet for the wife. Like, you take the bullet, okay? And it's like, wife, why should I submit to him? The guy's a total dweeb. I should be at least 50-50. And if anything, if you got a guy like Bundy over there, the wife actually has to step above her natural designed role, and she has to actually start becoming a man. This is happens in Yael, the woman in the Bible that took that nail, the giant nail, 10 spike, takes it in Sisera's temple and smacks that thing all the way through and kills the guy. Now, women are not naturally designed to go around taking spikes and jamming them into men's temples. Okay, that's not their highest and best use. However, when all the men who are supposed to go out there and fight are behaving like little wimps, then you got nobody left to do the fighting. At that point, I have to rely on Yael to take care of the business, and God actually commended and was happy that she did that. So she temporarily left her natural state as being the sweet side of the fence, and she became a warrior. There was another example. Oh, also, notice that these relationships are extremely sensitive. There's a tremendous amount of jealousy if you break this. Okay, you touch someone's kid, okay, the loving father, loving mother, you see what you ever do that? Yeah, you don't want to do that because it's extremely sensitive. Getting in between a husband and a wife, there's a jealousy, but it's not a bad jealousy. I am jealous of my kids, Okay? It's a good jealousy. It's like the love, this intimacy is so strong that if you try to stick something or somebody else in the middle of it, you try to kidnap a kid, in the scriptures, kidnapping was punishable by death. You got a death sentence for kidnapping. Why? Because you're interfering with this relationship. Okay? Homosexuality is punishable by death in the Old Testament. Why? Because you are interfering with this relationship. And why is this picture so important to God? Because that's his relationship with us. So when you destroy these pictures, you're destroying what the whole creation was built to be. That's why he's so sensitive on these issues. What?
Isn't he the author of confusion?
You're saying, why are we so confused? Why do men now not know what a man looks like? Why do women not know what women look like? I mean, we literally don't even know which bathroom to go to. I need a lawyer to decide which bathroom to use. It's getting to the point of the confusion. The relationship between son and child and parents. Do you ever see the way children treat their teachers today? See, not only do they not submit to their fathers and their mothers, they're taught to submit to nobody. Remember, no fear. We have it on our t-shirt. No submit. So if the kid goes to the teacher, he's not going to submit to the teacher. He's a law in and of himself. He's not going to submit to the police officer. He's not going to submit to the teacher. God forbid he's not going to submit to his mother. And absolutely not, he's not going to submit to his father. You see, that's the whole idea. Submit to nobody. Fear no one, submit to no one. Look at the characteristics, go back to loving characteristics of what a loving father, loving husband. In society, there's several jobs that are always looked at as the most holy, righteous Joes. Have you noticed when in the movies they always want to show the good husband and the good father? He always has, what's the usual job that he has? He's definitely not a developer, okay? Real estate developers, if these are child molesters, real estate developers are like right here. But the holy Joes of professions, what do you get? Who are the most righteous professions in general? Police officer, firefighter, and not a doctor. Doctor's too high up on the totem pole. The nurse and the teacher. Okay? Matter of fact, we got unions for this group of people because they are so sacrosanct. We have to protect them against the big bad doctors and against those big bad developers that are here. Okay, so firemen, police. Notice that a fireman is all grace. He's actually part of the characteristics of what a loving lamb is. Fireman goes in, he doesn't ask questions. The guilty guy, the guy who did the shooting, he'll go in there, he fixes everybody, he's nice to everybody. He's 100% grace. Notice the police officer, he's a lion. He couldn't care less. Hey, I'm arresting everybody. It's like, I don't know who shot who, we all going to jail tonight. We let the judge figure it out tomorrow. Okay? Okay, teacher, nurse. Teacher, I guess you could have both a lion and a lamb, but a nurse is definitely on the mercy side of the equation. My only thing is I want you to start thinking in terms of what makes people lovable and what makes them despicable, and what deception is used to separate, to make you think that you're this when you're really this. When you're really this. And the other way around. All right, let's keep going. Endurance. You're supposed to be tough. You're supposed to be long-suffering. The biblical term for endurance is long-suffering. It's one of the fruits of the Holy Spirit. That's what you're supposed to be. The opposite of that is somebody who gets discouraged easily. You know, the guy's he does the first 300 yards in the race. The kid's like, all right, Dad, I'm done. He's got no ability to resist pain for the benefit of others. So, what would you sell if you were wimpy. You're not long-suffering. What would you put on the cover of your T-shirt to sell it as a? Huh? I'm sensitive. That's right. I'm very sensitive to pain. Not your pain. I'm very sensitive to my pain, but he's going to sell it as sensitivity. I'm highly sensitive.
Is there a reason why you put good lion and bad lamb, and good lamb and bad lion? Or is that, are you just...
Yes, because
Like, you're trying to do the complete opposite? Or?
these two are opposites. So I'm trying to make it obvious that this is good and this is bad. I'm trying to get you to love this and to hate this. And then I want you to be able to spot the faker, whether it's in others or in yourself. Because I know for sure that everybody in this room has a problem with pride. Maybe except for me. but you got that? It's a good, worthy exercise. I'm telling you. Sit down with it and run it through the people that will give you an honest assessment of yourself. Okay, go. Security. You're supposed to provide security. Notice the Antichrist. How does he sell himself? Peace and security. Peace and security. Every time Trump talks about the peace deal, Netanyahu, Trump, everybody, peace and security. The UN was established for peace and security. This is what we've been promised. Notice that this guy has been promising all of the stuff that the good guy does. Now, instead of giving us peace and security, what he's going to deliver is brink of thermonuclear annihilation and big black ball of ice where nothing is alive. That's what he's going to deliver. But what he's going to promise is peace and security. That's why every time you turn on the news, whether it's CNN or Fox, peace and security. And instead, what do we really have in society? Nothing but a bunch of nervous Nellies. We are anxious. Everybody's nervous. The rich guy is nervous that tomorrow he's not going to be rich. The poor guy is nervous that tomorrow he's going to be even poorer than he is. The guy who's healthy is anxious that tomorrow he's going to be sick. The guy who's sick is anxious that tomorrow he's going to die. Everybody's anxious everywhere. So we have no security. We have tons of anxiety. However, what do we sell it as? Cautiously. We come up with economic terms from the Federal Reserve, which we have here. They literally come up with that term, cautiously optimistic. Yeah. That is an anxiety-generating machine right there, okay? Now, if you were printing money out of thin air and lending it to governments and charging them interest, what would you want all governments to do? Borrow what? A little or a lot? A lot. Now, how would you get governments to borrow a whole lot of money and never be able to pay it back? What are the two things? War? Awesome. Because you build a ship, you blow up the ship, bottom of the Atlantic. You will never be able to pay it back. And what's number two? How to generate debt, unrepayable debt. I'm not talking about building things like the Coronado Bridge, where you borrow money, you build it, and now you have a money-making machine. It's actually a good investment. It pays for itself off in 10 or 15 years. The nation is actually richer because of the Coronado Bridge. I'm talking about how to make a nation poor. Entitlements, basically paying people not to work. Not paying people to work, paying people not to work. And you make them entitled to whatever it is that they're doing, not working. It's a basic human right. And if you don't give me that, you're intolerant and you're unloving. You see? You're not a good lamb, because a good lamb is compassionate and sincere and sensitive and gentle and forgiveness. A good lamb will give everybody free food and free housing and free education and free health care. You see, if you don't give people free stuff, you're not a good lamb. So now I'm stuck with, let's look at the immigration problem, for example. We have tons of immigration problems. What are our choices? Somebody wants to come in the United States to work? Sorry, can't do that. I've tried. I've tried to import lots of people that want to come in to work. They can't do it. But Why do they say that the border has to be defended so tight? Well, because if all these people come across the border, we're going to have to give them free health care, free education. We have to pay all these people not to work. But here's a novel idea. What's wrong with having them come in and work? Yeah. Like, for example, the way the United States did it for hundreds of years before we adopted our current immigration policy. You couldn't come into the United States and get free anything. You could come in to work. And by the way, you know where we got that immigration policy? From that guy. The immigration policy of Israel was told that the immigrant is respected. He's treated with respect. You don't give him free stuff. He can come into work, but he cannot bring his culture, his pagan deities, and his pagan ways into the land because he's going to pollute it. If he's starving, then he wants to come in and work. God bless it, let him. And he's treated as a citizen. There's not two sets of laws for the immigrant and for the citizen. However, he's not entitled to anything. He's only entitled to work. So let's go back. If you were printing money out of thin air, and if you were in the business of lending that money to governments, you would want them to borrow a lot. And the two best ways to get a government in debt where they will never be able to repay you is build a military and then blow it up with fighting against another government's military. And the second thing is paying people not to work because they're entitled. You can have the entitlements based on whatever reason. Maybe you're an American Indian who was unfairly removed of his ownership of North America because he was here first. So those guys used to own all of North America and Canada because they were here first. So therefore, we owe the American Indians. You get the logic? So now they don't have to work. They just sit in their F-150 truck, smoke dope all day long, and we send them a check from the Indian casino because they're entitled because your great-great-great-grandfather shot an arrow or shot a gun, musket, and shot his great-great-grandfather and took away his land. Therefore, he's owed, and therefore you got to pay. Now, he doesn't have to work, and he's entitled. And now you've created a conflict, because guess what that American Indian guy is going to do to the Mr. White man? He's going to hate his guts. You've created a conflict out of thin air for no reason whatsoever. If you would have told the guy, hey, life's tough, suck it up, move on, get a job, everything would have been just fine. He would have forgotten about it and we moved on. Like the Italians. I mean, we changed sides on the war so many times, I don't even know who we have to be loyal to. Are we an American Indian? Are we an immigrant? Are we with Mussolini? Or are we with the Allies? We wait to see who's winning and then jump on that boat. Either way, let's not get caught up. Anytime Satan tries to make you hate another class because he sells you on the idea that you are entitled to something, you've just suckered yourself into a world of pain and poverty. See, you think that you're helping out the American Indian by making him entitled to owning all of North America? You're actually hurting him. Take the white and the black thing. You go up to the black guy and you say, because some guy took you 400 years ago and brought you here, wasn't me, but for some reason he had the same skin color I had, therefore I owe you something. You've actually damaged that poor man beyond repair. Because now he's trying to collect a debt that is uncollectible. And he's going to spend all of his time and energy to collect this debt from a guy who died 400 years ago instead of getting a job and producing and getting on with your life. You see, that's what forgiveness is all about. It's not worth accounting for this anymore. So God understands there's a certain point where let God bring the justice. You just forgive the guy and move on. Don't worry, the guy who did that to your grandpa, he will get his day in court. But you have to let God do the payback. If you take that vengeance into your dish and never forgive, you're going to find yourself in a position of misery. North Korea is a perfect example. They're still fighting a war that I don't even know who they're fighting. I'm not sure they know who they're fighting. But everybody in North Korea is totally miserable. Japan did okay. You know why after World War II they did okay? Because they actually said, you know what, forget it. Let's just give up and give in. They conceded to the United States, and their economy prospered afterwards because it's like, okay, well, and then we can start building cars and get Toyotas and Hondas out of them. But if they would have insisted on, well, you know, those Americans mistreated us during World War II, if they would have held that grudge, it would have been a North Korea to this very day. Okay? Okay. Good lions are thorough. Okay? They're complete. We say that his mind is like a steel trap. See, it's not that he's not forgetful. This guy doesn't forget anything. This is the type of God who has every hair on your head counted. Okay, the guy is thorough. But he's also forgiving. So, incompleteness is the opposite of it. You know, he whips out his wallet, drops the cash, forgot where are my house keys. Oh, my car's got a flat tire. The dude's a mess. So, how would you sell that to yourself and others? Huh? Yeah. I'm chill. I'm easygoing. I'm easy to get along with. Chill. And notice that when your kids use that word in this context, you feel like bitch slapping them. And that's why you feel like that. Okay, justice, corruption. The opposite of justice, corrupt. Cops in, the cops in southern Italy or Mexico, $50 and you could pretty much buy your way out of anything. How does that cop in Mexico go to sleep at night knowing that he's as corrupt as the day is long? How does he sell it to himself? I'm being I'm owed. I'm getting what my paycheck should be this. It's only this, so I'm providing justice to the equation. I'm getting what I was owed. That's how he sleeps at night. It's only fair.
Personal justice, though. He's not using the justice system. He's got his own version of that, right?
Oh, of course. All of these, who's the judge here? Yourself. And by the way, who's the judge on all of these religions, all the fake religions, Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, Rabbinic Judaism? Remember, we went through the exercise of who decides who's good and who's not. Who decides what's right and what's not? At the end of the day, it's always you. Now, in this religion, I decide what's right and what's wrong, and I get to heaven because I go like this, and I ooma all day long. In this religion, I'm not really sure what these guys have to do to get to heaven. In Christianity, what you have to do is you have to pray 1, 2, 3, and pray after me. The Catholics might charge you, some Latin or some Hail Marys and some Our Fathers. But bottom line is you pay a couple of bucks and you get yourself in heaven. And who creates all those rules? Not God. We created them ourselves. I used to think that. The reason why Rabbinic Judaism is so small, by the way, is because they charge a lot. It's like Netflix. These guys are charging like $613 a month. Okay? You're not going to get a lot of subscribers. Okay? You got to think Amazon. You got to think Netflix. You got to think bigger. Okay? So, Islam, you get 72 versions, and you got to pray 5 times a day? That's not bad. So let's say that's $72 a month. Okay, so you get a couple 1.6 billion people subscribe to the program. That's not bad. Okay, then the big guys come along, Christianity and Buddhism. Christianity says, you can do whatever you want, then just ask God to forgive you. Okay, that's pretty good. What's the price? Well, the Catholics, 40 days of Lent, $40 a month. That's not bad. Okay? The evangelicals come around and say, you don't even have to do the 40 days of Lent. We can let you in for doing absolutely nothing. You don't have to love anyone. You don't have to do anything. It's totally free. That's like $9.99. I mean, you do have to give money to the church. That at least. So, Buddhism, what do you have to do? Go to the top of a mountain, separate your physical from your flesh. You can pretty much do whatever you want. You could eat whatever you want. You could have sex with whatever you want. And you just separate it in your mind. Yeah, my body is dirty, but my spirit is clean. We like a father who's an initiator. Women like men that are initiators. Get my wife, get in the car, bring her to a place she doesn't know. She's like, "Where are we going?" Oh, okay. And the opposite is the guy, Ed Bundy, Al Bundy, on the couch, doesn't do anything. He's idle. He's dead. He's a deadbeat. Okay? What are you going to say? What does that deadbeat, when he looks in the mirror, what does he see? I'm not extravagant. I'm conservative. Instead of order, our God is a God of order. If your house is a mess, your car is a mess, your ideas are a mess, everything that you touch turns into a mess, you're basically following a God of confusion. But you don't want to go around saying, "I'm a confused idiot." That's not a good sales pitch. You have to say you are open-minded, a free spirit. Yeah, I listen to. I'm not. Could we use the word tolerant? I'm tolerant. Tolerant is the new because tolerant is the highest level of holiness. Yeah. As long as all of you guys tolerate me, that's what I need more than anything. Okay. Persuasiveness. Okay. That means that you have a little. You can reason. You can convince. You can woo. A loving father, a loving husband has that ability. They don't just go up to the kid and say, "You are going to do that." They're like, "Hey, why don't you consider doing this? This would be an excellent idea. You have a good skill in this. Why don't you do it?" He's persuasive in a loving way versus contentious. I call these guys the jar of honey. The more you touch them, the more they stick. If your character is like that, you're obnoxious. And everybody around you hates your guts, and they probably don't have the courage to tell you, but you should knock that off. But what does a contentious person see himself as? Wise, passionate about truth. I fight for justice and freedom and the American way. You see it? You make an appointment, that's a contract. You should keep it. When you're late, you basically tell people, "My time's more important than your time. I'm more important than you. I'm better than you. Or definitely not going to submit to you."
I was on the 5.
I was on the... It's somebody else's fault caused the delay. Chill. I like that chill thing. Go scroll back up. Notice the categories at the top. Pay attention to that good lion, bad lamb, bad lion. Maybe we'll give you guys homework, because I'm running out of stuff to say. So it's like, if you guys come back with all these words filled in, I think you will grow in your love of the Creator. I think you will grow in your love of your neighbor. I think you will grow in your ability to dissect a deceptive system as it's being presented to you. And I'm telling you, if you don't think that any of these apply to you, it probably means that you are so purpleated, that your mind is so reprobate, that you're beyond repair. In which case, I don't know what to do with you. If you think that none of these apply. Okay, so
Got a few questions.
okay.
Number one, is everything done for a purpose?
Is it the destiny? It's your destiny, Luke. That goes into the idea of God has arranged everything, God decides everything, and you're just along for the ride. God's will is like a freight train. I use the example of a freight train full of lead going 100 miles an hour, and it's going the way it's going. No humanity's actions are going to affect what this God has assigned because it is the destiny of everything. We call that sovereignty. God is sovereign. Notice where I put the word. I put the word under the jerk, tyrant, father, husband type like that. Why? Because I don't want to be married to a guy like that. I definitely don't want to have him as my dad. And if the creator of the universe behaved that way, I think I would have to join the Luciferian rebellion and try to become one of the rebel bases against the evil empire. Star Wars, right? Now, let's be graceful and see why that idea is presented. Why is it that a large portion of these religions believe in destiny and that God is sovereign? You don't want a universe where everything is up in the air, okay? You need a guide, you need a pilot in the captain's chair of the plane, okay? You need a captain in the boat. The universe needs one guy to run the place. When push comes to shove, we need one God. We need one God to rule and to run the place. However, even though he has full authority and full power, and he is sovereign, if you want to be categorized as a loving father, I understand you got all the money and you got all the physical strength over the 10-year-old kid. But if you want to be categorized as a loving father, you are actually now limited to what you can and cannot do. That's the part that everybody says, oh, no, that's impossible. You are now limiting God. No, I'm not limiting God. God, the minute he decides to create other beings in his image, even animals, by the way, notice he cares a lot about the feelings of animals. He cares about the feelings of animals, which means that if God makes an animal just so that he could whip him and beat him for fun, God has now lost his status as loving God. He might have the authority to make that animal. He might have the power to make that animal. But if he's not sensitive to that animal's pain or pleasure, he's lost the definition of a loving God. And he's now a tyrant. So, what is that? Does that answer the question? Is everything done for a reason? What was exactly the question? Does God have a plan?
Is everything done for a purpose?
Is everything done for a purpose? I don't know. Did I answer the question?
Next question.
All right.
Are there any things we should fear?
There's one thing you should fear. The scriptures, every time the word fear is used in the scriptures, it's always don't, except for one thing. So in effect, Jehovah agrees with Nike, except for there's one commandment where you're actually ordered to fear. You're supposed to fear one guy, one being, that guy, the boss. You have to recognize that you're here and that he's here. In fact, children are supposed to fear their father. It's a respect, but it's also a fear. When Daddy walks in the room, the exaggeration of that was Sound of Music. You know the scene I'm talking about? But there was something that was kind of beautiful about the scene. Because, do you remember the one kid who screws up? He did not have, he knew that his dad loved him and his dad was going to be graceful for him. And in fact, the dad started laughing. You remember what I'm talking about? That's a healthy fear of your father. And that's the only thing you're supposed to fear, nothing else. Because once you have a guy who is all powerful and he is all loving and loves me, once you got a dad like that, what are you afraid of? That you're not going to eat? Notice that when you have a dad that knows what he's doing, the kids are extremely confident. They'll go up there and they'll pick up a rattlesnake. And they couldn't care less because they know that, hey, if this is bad, Dad will take care of it. They're extremely brave. They're courageous. They're confident. They're beautiful. That's what you're supposed to do. And you will do that. You will get those attributes if you fear your Creator. And the opposite is also true. The fear, the anxiety, the feeling that, oh my God, we're on this planet, it's going to overheat, it's going to cool off, we're going to freeze to death. There's a meteor that's going to hit the planet. What are we going to do? See, all these people who do not have a loving, all-powerful Creator that they're submitting to, they have to go to bed worrying about the planet getting hit by a meteor. They have to worry about global warming and global cooling and global famine and that there's not enough hot water and that there's not enough cold water and there's not enough oxygen. They have all these global problems that the earth is somehow going to shift off of the axis. I sleep like a baby at night knowing that the earth is not going to shift off its axis. They got a loving Father who's got it in his hands. And I sleep as good as my kids sleep. They don't worry about somebody breaking into the house because Daddy's on guard. They don't worry about what they're going to eat tomorrow because Daddy's worrying about it. They're happy and they're peaceful.
You can guess, I'm here to get sick, and you know that your daddy is not.
To the extent that you don't trust your daddy, to the extent that your dad cannot fix cancer, like, yeah, if my kid gets cancer, I'm like, sorry, son, you got to die. To the extent that I cannot take care of the problem, then that gives you a reason to be anxious. However, as a kid, as you grow up, you're supposed to transfer that reliance on your earthly father. By the time you're 2 and 3 or 4, 10, 11, 12, you're supposed to be transferring that reliance to your heavenly Father. You understand? So the 3-year-old kid might have fear of getting sick because, like, Dad can't fix me. But if you're 20 years old or 30 years old and you're afraid of getting sick, what that shows is that you haven't transferred your faith to your heavenly Father. You don't trust Him. Said another way, you do not trust your heavenly Father that He's going to take care of it, or that if you do get cancer, it's actually the right thing, that's what's supposed to happen. All fear is based on lack of faith. I didn't say we're not talking about cancer, we're talking about the fear. Fear is equivalent to no faith. It's a faith killer. It's the opposite of. Fear comes in, faith goes out. Faith comes in, fear goes out. You understand? It's in verse, they cannot be together in the same room. One will totally push the other one out. To the degree that you are fearful about anything, make a list of whatever you're afraid of. The boogeyman, the Bears, the Chargers not winning the game. I don't know. To whatever it is that you are afraid of, to that extent is what you are not trusting your all-powerful Heavenly Father to take care of. And by the way, notice that this kingdom is based on fear of everything. Satan feeds you fear like French bread. He loves fear. It's extremely powerful. It's extremely easy to manipulate human beings by using fear. So he'll get you to be afraid of everything. He'll get you to be afraid. If you're white, he'll get you to be afraid of the black guy. If you're black, he'll get you to be afraid of the white guy. Environmental reasons, he'll get you to be afraid of throwing a Pepsi can into a what do you call the dump? A landfill. Now think of that. Aluminum comes from the ground, right? So theoretically, when you put it in the landfill, you're recycling it. However, we're not taught that. We're taught that if you throw an aluminum can back into a landfill, that now the earth is going to implode. And you are fearful, and you create anxiety over a Pepsi can.
Next question. How do you act like a good Christian and uphold God's law without being judgmental?
How do we uphold law without being judgmental? How do we uphold law and still be loving? Well, how does a loving father do it? How does a loving husband do it? How would you like your father to have done that to you? He had law and he had grace and mercy. If you were the wife, picture yourself as the wife and you're married to this husband, how would you like him to do it to you? If you actually go through that mental exercise, I think you can start seeing where love brings you. I could give you examples of what not to do. Read the question again.
How do you act like a good Christian and uphold God's law without being judgmental?
How do you act like a good Christian? Already over there I'm thinking, well, you're not a good Christian, so you have to act like you're a good Christian. And now you have a problem because like, I know that I'm a selfish person, but I'm trying to act like I'm not. And now when you are into that selfish mode, it is extremely important for you to find fault in others. It becomes an essential part of your ingredients because in order for your equation to balance, in order for me to be up here, I need you to be down here. So judgmentalism is fundamental with pride. Okay? I have to
put you down to make myself
higher. That's right.
The other thing is that people will project their own badness onto others, and they see what's really in their own heart.
Because I know, if I'm weak at something, I'll recognize it in you. If I'm a drunkard, I'll immediately spot out the other drunkard in the room, and I will project that out. So those are all signs of unrighteous, unholy, unloving people. Because the most loving guy that ever walked the planet, this guy, he didn't have a problem. He was not judgmental. As much as he loved the law and he upheld the law, he fulfilled the law. There's one word that you would never use to describe him would be judgmental. Isn't that weird? How could a perfect being like that love the law and not be judgmental? Yeah, it goes into the take the beam out of your eye before you can talk about taking the toothpick out of mine. You see, going back to the pride problem, the problem with pride is that you think that you're here when you're really here. And notice it doesn't really matter where you are. If a 3-year-old thinks that he's got the authority of a 6-year-old, he's prideful, okay? Now, if Warren Buffett comes in here and says, yeah, I'm a rich man, I wouldn't say that that's prideful or arrogant, okay? But the minute you bring yourself higher than where you really are in God's ranking of things, now you've just entered the world of prideful and arrogant. And that's why it's so easy to use this with nations or with race or with your family or with your sex or with your culture, because you could easily try to elevate it higher than where it actually belongs.
But judgment can also be good judgment.
Of course.
In that word, it always makes one bad word, so it's good judgment.
Absolutely. The idea that we're not supposed to judge anything, that's absolute nonsense. If you don't judge between the difference in red and green, you won't make it home tonight. So I highly recommend judging. If we don't know how to judge, we don't know who to throw in jail and who to throw out. A police officer that has no judgment is useless. The entire characteristics of Jesus, that he comes as a judge when he comes back to set up his 1,000-year reign, that is exactly why we're promoting an idea of thou shalt not judge. What we're really saying is, thou shalt not judge us. Humanity does not want to be judged by this guy. We want to judge ourselves under our own terms. We know we've broken his laws, and the last thing we want is to be found guilty. That's why we come up with the idea of thou shalt not judge. But a loving father is judging things all the time. A loving husband judges things all the time. A mom that knows what she's doing is making judgments all the time. You literally couldn't get up and start your car without judgments. Everything you do requires judgment. Judgmental is when you see the error in the other person but you don't see it in yourself. And usually, his error is this big, and yours is this big, and you see his really, really clearly, but you don't see yours. I think that's the definition of a judgmental person. Yeah. So when in doubt, leave the judging to God. At least when you're starting to condemn other people. Get out of the condemning business. Judging what's right or not, falling in love with God's laws, everybody should be a lawyer. To the extent that we fall in love with that creator, people that live in my house, my kids know that, hey, we can't eat strawberries, on top of the white carpet. There's a law, and the kids that love me obey that law, and there's not a problem. Everybody enjoys the nice, clean white carpet. I enjoy it, they enjoy it. It's part of the kingdom, and it's awesome. Laws don't create problem. We love laws. Laws is what generates nice, clean white carpets. So this idea that we are under the age of grace, which we are, does not mean in any way that it is a lawless time in society.
Well, how about in a world that is fallen and you have, you live in the United States, which is, arguably the best country to live in, but even still, you have, especially more recently, things that should be evil that are not being called evil, that they're being called good. How do you still maintain the line of being, a Christian, so to speak, or, okay, yes, I believe in the Bible, but when you tell somebody that, then yeah, well, the Bible believes in, there's the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, you want to go kill all the gay people? Is that what you're telling me? Maybe that was...
What they're saying is, you don't love gay people, do you? You want to kill them all, don't you? And, by the way, if that's in your heart, if you hate gay people, then they're right. You are being judgmental. See, we're supposed to hate the sin, but you're supposed to love people. So we hate homosexuality, but we don't hate the homosexuals. We hate the pagan Christians. No, we hate pagan Christianity, but we don't hate Christians. We hate Buddhism because of the destruction that it causes to society, but we don't hate Buddhists. We don't like homosexuality because it takes 30 years off of your life. That's why we don't like smoking, because it takes 8 to 10 years off of your life. So you don't want your kid to smoke because you want him to live those 10 years. But the minute you start looking at the person, oh, he is an inferior human being because he's now smoking, and I, of course, went up a notch, to whatever degree that he went down a notch. You understand the way it works? Now you're into the judgmental phrase. You are not loving that person. You're actually kind of happy that he's doing whatever sin he's doing. Because in comparison to when I put myself around, it makes me look good. Yeah.
I was thinking about that passage where the Romans, that Jesus is being asked to judge the Romans, the oppressors. And he's like, no, pay Caesar what's due Caesar. In other words, I'm not in that business.
I'm not in that business. Not today. Not today. I'm not in that business today. I'm going to be in that business this day. But today, I'm not here for that. He told that to his mom when his mom's like, hey, we got a wine shortage. Can you fix the problem? He's like, yeah, I can fix the problem, but I'm not really here for that. And then, of course, he whipped out the mercy card and said, okay, Mom, I'll take care of it.
Another judging question.
How do we justly and necessarily judge without becoming a parochial Pharisee?
Well, put yourself as the sinner. What are you judging? Are you judging the smoker? Are you judging the liar, the rapist, whatever? Find out whatever crime you have, and imagine that you did it. How would you want to be judged? Start with that. Again, put yourself in the position of the wife. she's not as physically strong as the husband. So how would you want? Would you want him to get into a fist fight with you? No. We call that, spousal abuse. So a judge is a person in authority and power. He has authority and power that you do not have. Well, reverse the roles. If you had the authority, how would you like to be dealt with if you were the judgee? Judgeor?
Jesus described it though when he said, even if you've looked at a woman with lust, you've committed adultery. So basically,
He was getting upset when they're like, hey, well, this woman's been caught in adultery. Moses says we got to kill her. What do you say? That whole thing was a trap, because if he said, let her go, well, then he's against the law of Moses. If he says, kill her, well, then you're not as merciful and as forgiving as everybody said you are. It was a trap. It had nothing to do with adultery. It had nothing to do with that woman. Because notice, where's the guy in the whole soup? Why did he get off scot-free? The whole thing was a setup. So what did he do? His answer was, okay, let's go with the judgment thing. I'm not going to judge it because I didn't see it. Whoever's got no sin, throw the first stone. So notice, it was a perfect way of fulfilling the law. He didn't condone adultery. And it was a perfect way of fulfilling the law of forgiveness too. Now, read the question again.
How do we justly and necessarily judge without becoming a parochial Pharisee?
Okay, the parochial Pharisee, it's always got to do with that I can do no wrong. My family, my culture, my race, my nation, my religion, my status is better than your status. My religion is better than your religion. I'm a high-level priest. You're a low-level laity person. The minute you start elevating yourself above others, you're getting dangerously close to being Pharisaical. That was the danger of the Pharisees.
and Jesus actually said, Matthew 7:1, do not judge or you will be judged. So we're commanded not to judge.
He's highlighting the fact that, hey, right now you might be in a position of you're the judge, but there's going to come a day where you're going to be the judged. And then he tells you, and by the way, whatever standard you used when you had the authority, I'm going to go ahead and use that standard when I judge you. That's a big key. Exactly.
So the Pharisees thought it's only going one way.
It's only
He's
going
kind of coming back at you.
That's right.
And they made up all kinds of commands that had nothing to do with God's law.
613 got turned into 6,013. Because the more commandments you make, the more people become law breakers, the more authority you have over them, because you are a dispenser of law. The Pharisees obeyed the law. Not really, but they gave you the impression they did. So that brought you lower, brought them higher. That was the whole business.
Then can you go the other way with that and say, well, I don't want to be judged, so I'm not going to do anything?
What do you mean, like the church today? Yes. You can go the other way. I judge nobody. Nobody judges me. I judge. You make a deal. I see no evil on your dish, and you see no evil on my dish. One hand washes the other. That is much more prevalent in our circles. If you're in the Orthodox Jewish circles, you might be talking about legalism. But in our circles, we've taken grace and turned it into a license to sin. It's lasciviousness by definition. It's in what?
It's in wisdom. In having wisdom, we're told to have wisdom.
Yeah, sometimes you have to be a judge of things because it's your responsibility and you have a duty to have that responsibility. But you also, and back to the love and law. It has to be balanced out.
Yeah.
Wise as serpents and harmless as doves.
Yeah, but it's gotta be both.
I think the balance is to love the other person. If you do not properly love the other person, you have no authority or permission to judge that soul.
Go back. There's only two religions in the universe. There's the one where you love others and you love Jehovah, and there's the one where you love yourself and you don't care about other people's pain and pleasure. You only care about yourself. Those are the.
Go ahead. What if the reason you're trying to correct someone is you love them?
Or is it because you want them to feel like dirt so that I could feel like,
Yeah, so I've had a legal relationship with my partner for years where, it makes him feel better if he can judge you, condemn you. And I just tolerate it. But to me, it's a bad habit. And that's Pharisaism.
yes.
So if you said it in love, if you were trying to help somebody, then you're trying to bring them closer to God. That's not Pharisaism.
When Jesus talked to the woman at the well, he was judging left and right. I mean, he, you're doing, he was flinging out the judgments like, you ever see Fred Flintstone when he eats? But it was not being judgmental, he was being loving. And she recognized it right away. She went home and told her husband, dude, I found a dude that's awesome. Okay, you got to come meet this guy. If he was judgmental, she would have left with, see you later, and I hope I never see you again. That would have been the difference. It would not have been bring the whole town over to meet the guy.
Jonah, right? So God tells him to go judge Nineveh, and he's actually excited.
Because he doesn't love Nineveh. He wants to see the fire and brimstone come down and annihilate these people. He's looking for that. Yeah. God's, on the other hand, he actually had a heart for the Ninevites. As wicked as they were, he was waiting and wanting them to repent, and he was happy when they repented, and Jonah was sad. Even the animals, because animals are sentient beings. They have feelings, so God cares about them. In order for you to have a kosher animal, you have to kill them in a humane way. If you make the animal suffer, you can't even eat the thing. That's how sensitive this being is to pain. That's how sensitive this being is to pain. Now, of course, we go around and we tell people that if you don't do what he says, he's going to throw you in hell for a billion years, and you won't even be halfway done with your sentence. So animals, they get to die with no pain. But a human being that's a rebel, he doesn't get that luxury. He's got to suffer forever and ever and ever. And the idea behind that is that here's the last one we heard, we are made in God's image, and because we are made in God's image, we have a soul and a spirit and a body, and a spirit is eternal. Because we're made in God's image, God has a spirit, spirits live forever, therefore you live forever. And the minute that you make the human being live forever, now you have to put him somewhere. If he's a selfish pee-pee, prodigal, what do you have? Prideful prodigal, the pee-pee. Don't be a pee-pee. If you're a prideful person and you have to live forever, notice that forces me with the idea of an eternal hell and torment in hell. You see, once you buy into an idea of an eternal soul or eternal spirit, you've created a problem that you cannot fix now. And then we dance around it because it sounds totally cruel and unusual to do that. So he's like, well, it's it's absence from God. It's eternal separation. Okay, what does that mean? It means that you're burning in hell for eternity in agony and misery and pain and suffering. That's what it means. You just don't want to say it. But that's what we believe and that's what we've been teaching. So I'm taking the position that is a blatant violation of God's character, and that in nowhere in the scriptures did he ever say that. He did say that hell exists. He did say that evil will be punished, never torture. That is something that only the other side does. Our side never tortures anybody. As a matter of fact, torture is the first sign that you belong to this kingdom. Okay? Torture is the first sign that you're in jail in North Korea and not in Carlsbad.
Isn't there like a verse in the Bible where it says that the guy sees, Abraham, that sees people suffering?
Yeah.
Isn't that torture?
No. Suffering is not torture. It's completely different. You got to get that through your head. Because I know that today we're taught that waterboarding people is a military necessity. But 20, 30 years ago, that was actually against American law. Nobody would have ever done that. But today we're accepting the idea of torture like, you torture somebody. You have to torture somebody to save the building, you torture them. No problem. Move on. Next. See, we've desensitized ourselves to torture. Did you ever see Was it Dick Cheney? Vice, were they interviewing him on his opinion of waterboarding, and he was flinging it out like, Sacha Baron Cohen made actually a joke. He got a water jug and got him to sign it. Think of this. As he was doing it, Sacha Baron Cohen he's a liberal, he's a lefty. He was doing it as a joke. But the conservative, right-wing, holy Republican, God-fearing man, he endorsed the empty water jug as a trophy of the waterboarding that happened in Iraq. You understand what I'm saying? The guy was so desensitized to it. He thought he was being cool. Yeah, I'll like an author endorses his book, he signed the water jug. You see what I mean? That's not God's character. Nothing in the scriptures make God look like that. Every time he kills people, and he does kill people, it's always done swiftly and humanely.
But what about the verses that talk about the gnashing of the teeth, the fire, the burning, a drop of water? That to me sounds like
punishment.
Well, lots of pain.
There is pain. I didn't say there's no pain. I didn't say there's no hell. I said there's a hell for 1,000 years. I mean, that's a long time. I don't want to go there. I don't want to. You think that the people are at that scene, are at that judgment? You think they're not going to be weeping? You think they're not going to be gnashing their teeth? There's going to be weeping and gnashing of the teeth.
Like the unbeliever will say, your God tortures people. How do you, separate the two?
How do you separate punishment from torture? Well, look at it. What do you do to your kids? You punish your kids. You don't torture your kids. Okay? We punish our criminals. We don't torture our criminals. North Korea does that. So there's a
in most cases, right, fear of punishment is supposed to deter you and also maybe cause you to change your ways. But if you go to hell and you're being punished, is there any redemption for you at that point, or you're gone? That's it.
The time for redemption, according to the scriptures, is before you die. There is no opportunity to change your afterwards.
Why
Yeah.
not just execute right there? Why do I have to?
Why do you got to pay?
Yeah.
Because there's an element of justice.
So you're saying
It's
it's proportional?
proportional punishment.
So not everybody gets punished the same amount.
Why would you? If a guy steals a pistachio, or if a guy nukes an entire country, would you spank him to the same degree? I mean, what judge? What father would do that?
We were all raised with. I was raised with the idea that one tiny little sin is rebellion against God. It's the same as any other sin, no matter how big, because it's still rebellious. Sorry, that's the ultimate,
Okay, so the guy that steals the pistachio at Albertsons and the guy that robs Fort Knox, the judge assigns the same sentence to both. What will we do with a judge like that? Yeah, that judge is nuts. He's got no understanding of right and wrong.
Could the weeping and gnashing of teeth be self-inflicted because of the realization of the punishment? Meaning,
by the way, you are punished forever. The fact that you get thrown into a lake of fire and you get annihilated after 1,000 years of watching all this happen, your punishment has eternal consequences. The idea of not existing anymore is absolutely terrifying to anybody that loves life. But it is eternal. It is eternal. The punishment is eternal. But don't take that and turn it into eternal torment, eternal torture. God doesn't torture even for a second. He does punish. He doesn't torture. Get the distinction very loud and clear. It's one of the ways that we have been misrepresenting God's character, and the secular humanists are laughing at us all the way to the bank by saying, wow, your God, he's a tyrant. Either do it his way or the highway. Not our God. This guy woos you. He's been chasing this girl for 6,000 years. He's going out of his way to and she hasn't even been really nice, but he still tries. He's working, he's wooing, and he's courting her. He's going out of his way. He's a lovable dude. The question is, why aren't you saying yes to him? Why aren't you getting married to him? What's wrong with you? That's what you should be thinking. Not, I'm not sure I want to get married to him because he might be a jerk.
When did Jesus become divine? Was it when he was born or when he was baptized and the dove descended upon him?
That's a good question. I've been thinking about a lot, actually. Well, let's define the terms. What do you mean by divine?
How you
We're looking at you.
Right there, on the chart.
Well,
when did he go from human to angelic or divine? When did that happen?
well, I mean, my off the cuff, I guess that's what I learned in Catholic grade school, is that he was both. He was 100% of both, you know, in all eternity and in all forever. He never started. You know, there's one thing that Satan has that Jesus doesn't have. It's a birthday. Okay, so I think his existence has been forever in that direction and in the future. I look at Jesus as a just like you look at the burning bush. Remember the burning bush that Moses was looking at, or the whirlwind and the fire and the smoke that was coming out of the temple, or the Balaam's donkey. God takes possession of angels, of humans, of animals. It's the same being in a different form. So when did he take possession of that particular physical body? Well, I guess when he was born, or when the Holy Spirit got Mary pregnant. But 1,000 years before, God is in a physical form having lunch with Abraham. That's why we call him the pre-incarnate Christ. It's just the same being appearing. You know, he's dressed in a tuxedo. Sometimes he's dressed in shorts and flip-flops. You know, sometimes he looks like a beach bum. Sometimes he looks like the king. It's the same guy appearing in different formats.
The devil's advocate, flip it around. What's the harm in the alternative?
What's the alternative?
What's the harm in the alternative? I mean, why would that be less believable? That he's born human, born man, the dove descends on him,
and then God takes possession of him when he got baptized in the Jordan River?
now he's 50-50. Or 100.
That's what the Eastern Orthodox believe.
Okay, but you still have the fact that he didn't have a physical father, so he still is the son of God. Day one, he's the son of God. You got to call him that, right? Okay, so you have a son of God. He doesn't get the full dose of the Holy Spirit until baptism. Age of accountability. So he at the end, you're still describing a half God, half man. You're still describing a pretty special guy that doesn't fit the parameters of any other human being that ever walked the earth.
But if that happens, he immediately meets the Jews' need for completeness of a divine.
The Jews cannot stand the idea of the Messiah being divine in any format.
They can't accept him as born of human, but they can accept if God descended upon him, the age of accountability as a dove. Then it fits.
They still won't give him divinity. As a matter of fact, what gets the Jew to recognize that they went to bed with the wrong guy, what clicks them out of this stupor, is when he sits in the temple and proclaims himself to be God. What's the verse in 2 Thessalonians? Where he actually sits in the temple and proclaims himself to be God. When the Jews see the Antichrist do that, they're going to be like, dude, that guy's claiming divinity. He's not our guy. That actually is protecting them. The fact that they believe that the Messiah is not divine is going to help them recognize the error of this guy. Once they disconnect from this guy, then they could actually see him for who he truly was. So in general, as far as what I know about Judaism, they cannot stand the idea of the Messiah being divine. They link that with polytheism. Oh, you guys are saying there's two gods. The minute that you put divinity, see what I say that God appears as a plant or an animal or human, the minute that you take him out of this realm, they immediately go, oh, you're polytheistic. Polytheistic. Stop listening. Polytheistic nut job.
Well, but the opposite can be said, because if he was always, and he was basically planted in the woman, and he's always been, well then you're polytheistic as well, because then that makes the case for, basically the 3 in 1 from the beginning. Whereas if he's born human, God's spirit enters him. Now we're singular. Now one God, one man, God's spirit, goes through existence on this earth with the same suffering as any man, because he's human with God's spirit in him.
I like the fact that he suffered as a man. I don't like when we say that, well, Jesus did all that because he was Superman. He had supernatural power. He was God. So, of course, he did the cross thing and he did all this super. So, in effect, you're taking away the sacrifice that he did as a human.
No, I'm saying it's much greater.
Yes, you augment the fact that he suffered in the flesh.
If I take that position that God descended upon him at the age of accountability, then what he did is even more amazing, because
Yes.
he didn't have any foreknowledge.
Yes, I'll grant you that.
These things happen to him, and he acts divine. He is divine. He becomes divine.
I mean,
How then do you deal with the fact that he was worshipped as a child?
no.
So if you're not divine, you're worshipped. That's a problem.
Yeah.
Well, we're
His
looking
divinity
for,
was recognized
but
by
we're
those
looking
people.
for him to come back. No different. I mean, the expectation was already set.
They were looking
It was
for
already
a
in
savior.
motion. They were looking for him.
Who was the prophet that said, he goes, there was a prophet that wasn't allowed to die until he saw him. Was it Zechariah or somebody? And he prayed to him like he bowed down to that baby like it was God.
But don't forget, they did the same to John the Baptist.
Yeah, but it was highlighted as an error.
But they were thinking that he was the one.
Yes, but it was highlighted as an error. When they bowed down to Jesus at birth, nobody was repudiating.
Also,
I just help with the Greek. The Greek is not worship, it is kneel down. You kneel down to a king, you kneel down to an officer, a lieutenant. So this word is only translated as worship when it's talking about Jesus. But the same word will be called homage or some other English word, so you don't realize the same word is used for something that refers to people who are not divine and people who are. Something to look up. Proskuneo.
I mean, so what? Yeah, what's the big deal? Let's say that he was divine at birth, he was divine at 6, he was divine at 12, or divine at 30. So what?
Same accomplishment. Mm-hmm. Well, a little greater, because arguably man fully suffering as a human, and yet, divine, because he's not half God, not half man. He's man.
He's 100%
God's spirit. And maybe that's it.
Hey, don't ask me. I'm just a corn dog salesman, okay? We're getting way above my pay grade. I'm just trying to get people not to be disrespectful and lazy and and apathetic. I'm happy at this. That others, if I could, the joke, the dad goes up to his son and says, son, the two biggest problems in America are apathy and ignorance. And the son's like, no, I didn't know that, Dad, but I really don't care.